Welcome back to For Perspective. I'm Bill. Today I've got a show all about Notes apps and all of the Notes apps that I've had experience with. But first, we're going to get into some Apple and AI news. So let's get on with it. I recently released a video about the AirPods Max, and I complained about the fact that you couldn't use them wirelessly. So naturally, the day after I released the video, Apple releases the USB-C to 3.5 millimeter headphone cable for the USB-C version of the AirPods Max, giving it the ability to now be used in wired mode. And when iOS 18.4 launched, the AirPods Max got a firmware update as well to support low latency playback. Except there was an issue with the 18.4 update and the initial firmware update released for the headphones, and I found out just how stupid it is to update firmware on the AirPods Max. You have to take the headphones out of their case, let them connect to your phone or your tablet or your computer, plug in the headphones, and then wait. Apple's official website, this is their official documentation, tells you exactly that, and says it could be up to 30 minutes. So about 40 minutes went by. I came back upstairs to check on the update, and still nothing. It's like, okay, what's going on? Maybe I have to wait a little bit longer. I waited an hour, nothing. I unpaired them, I repaired them, I forgot them. Could not figure out what was going on until on Mac Rumors the next day I saw the issue with the iOS 18.4 update and the firmware. So Apple rolled back that initial firmware release, and just about 24 hours later, they came out with a new version of the firmware for the USB-C AirPods Max. So last night I did the whole process over again. In about 30 minutes, they were updated, and I was able to test out the wired mode using my Mac Studio. I actually plugged them in and started listening to a video I was editing in Final Cut Pro, because that was notoriously the downside to AirPods and AirPods Max. Bluetooth audio just isn't fast enough to keep up with the playback when you're doing things like video or audio editing. So the ability to have, they call it ultra low latency playback, which I think is just another way to say it's wired. To have the wired connection makes a huge difference, and now this cable does actually make the AirPods Max a feasible pair of headphones for editing. I'm still not sure you would want to do that because of the sound profile, but that whole bit aside, I just had to come on and complain about, is this really what we're doing to update firmware in 2025 for headphones, Apple? Like, I don't understand why I can't just plug it into my computer and force the update, or do it some way like that. I have to wait for it over the air when you decide it's okay for me to update my headphones. And then WWDC got confirmed for a June 9th kickoff and keynote. There's a bunch of rumors on what we're going to see at WWDC, including a complete UI redesign for iOS and maybe even Mac OS. The rumors are saying that they're going to try to incorporate some of the Vision Pro style glass-like features. We'll see. I think these are just rumors now, but in a couple of months, we'll know the answer, what's going to happen to the user interfaces. And then in AI news, ChatGPT is getting into hot water. If you've been on social media at all, you would have seen that ChatGPT 4.0 image generation got an upgrade, and everybody is trying to make things in the style of Studio Ghibli. So here we go again. OpenAI, Sam Altman. I'm really not thrilled with how this company and the CEO are handling situations like this. I mean, a few weeks ago, I read a story that was basically like, we need to start training the models on all of the copyrighted stuff in order to keep up with China. I don't agree with, taking basically IP, copyright information, intellectual property from somebody else that created this style of artwork. plugging into ChatGPT and then just anybody can generate stuff in that style. To me, this screams of an intellectual property lawsuit. I do think Studio Ghibli has filed a lawsuit against ChatGPT. And the obvious solution here is licensing. If you want to make some stuff that looks like a certain studio, like Studio Ghibli or whatever, then you're going to have to pay the people that created the IP to begin with. It's just like anything else. You can't just go say, "Oh, I'm going to make a Halo TV show," without paying some sort of licensing fee to Microsoft to use the Halo name and, make a show about the Halo universe. So I don't know why we're treating AI so differently. Like, there's no rules. We have to move as fast as we can. Just ignore all the laws or we're going to lose the AI race. Seems a little bit ridiculous, but we'll see where this goes. I've canceled my OpenAI. I had a ChatGPT Plus subscription for about a month. I still use Claude as my primary AI. I bought the yearly pro plan for Claude, so that's my main interface. And I like the inputs and outputs and interface of Claude better, even though it doesn't have some of these things like image generation or video generation. It's more helpful for the writing, brainstorming, creative type tasks that I do anyways. And then Google launched Gemini 2.5 Pro. I did go get a Google One subscription for a month here just to try it out. I'm playing around with it, playing around with what they call gems, which as far as I can tell is kind of like a project. You can upload custom instructions, different documents, and that's similar to what I have for Claude. So I have kind of like a YouTube creative partner in Claude that has different things from courses I've taken about titles and thumbnails and storytelling and different ideas. So being able to bounce off ideas with the AI and truly treat it like a creative partner to help me get better flow in videos, hone in on messaging, and maybe refine the titles and thumbnails that I've come up with. So speaking of flow, let's go right into the main topic for this week, and that is all about Notes apps. I've made a couple of videos recently about Apple Notes, and I thought it'd be fun to detail my Notes history because I've shown everybody what I use right now in Apple Notes, but I've used what feels like every major Notes app with the exception of Evernote. I never really got into the Evernote ecosystem, which the way that panned out years later is probably good for me. But I constantly have this itch to try new Notes apps, even though I don't really need a new Note app. Apple Notes is kind of like a love-hate relationship. Maybe not love-hate. Love-tolerate is more like it. I like Apple Notes, but there are some key drawbacks because it's a simple interface. It's a simple application, not necessarily a pro app per se, but we're going to head all the way back to 2018. And I had just entered grad school, was primarily using a Windows PC. So at that time, I was using OneNote. And despite being a Microsoft product, OneNote actually has really good support for the iPad and really good support for the Apple Pencil. And handwriting notes is one of the best ways that, for myself, I find that I retain information. So as I needed to read things or write things for grad school, I did a lot of it in the iPad Air 4 at the time with the Apple Pencil. And this was also helpful for the PMP exam. I did a lot of quizzes, a lot of memory recall. There were a lot of problems that I wanted to jot out in OneNote and use the Apple Pencil to help reinforce that information and help me study for the test. But eventually I kind of gave up on OneNote because I started to move away from Windows, got myself a Mac computer. So then I was, iPad, iPhone, Mac. So I didn't really need a cross-platform solution. And I was watching a lot of Christopher Lawley at the time, so I really didn't jump right into Apple Notes, but I wasn't also writing a whole lot. During that time, I didn't have a YouTube channel. I was doing some book reviews and some blogs on my website to try to gain traction there. So I was actually using Drafts. And Drafts is an extremely lightweight yet powerful markdown editor. It can be used for free, but I found that it was best used with their paid subscription, which is, actually highly affordable as far as subscriptions are concerned. And you get draft extensions, or the ability to make draft extensions where you can effectively build your own shortcuts for what you want to do with the text files after you're done writing them. So like I said, I was writing blog posts in Drafts. I would then just copy paste that into my website. And then I had a couple extensions where I would archive them in Apple Notes as kind of the final resting place because it was free. And if I ever decided to not to stop using Drafts, which ultimately I did, I still had all of the things that I had written. It wasn't until about 2023 that I started using Apple Notes. I got into the whole building a second brain thing, reading Tiago Forte's book. And I actually took his advice from one of the YouTube videos on his channel was, if you're going to try out a new app, you have to stick with it for at least 30 days. That's going to give you a feel of if the app works for you, how it works. You can dig into it a little bit further than just trying it for a day or two or like a week and throwing it aside. So 30 days turned into 60, which turned into 90. And then I was really itching for something new after that. I was kind of content with Notes, but keep in mind, note linking wasn't around back then in Apple Notes. So I set my eyes on Obsidian. Obsidian drew me in with the graph view, note linking, backlinks. It has block text editing similar to Drafts. Has a table of contents menu on the right, which is important for long articles. All of the different plugins that you can do. You can make dashboards with data view. So much customization in Obsidian that it really felt like, okay, this is my true second brain. Like this is what a second brain app is supposed to be. Now, the downsides with Obsidian is that there's not really any shareable functionality. Like collaboration on notes is very difficult. And then I kind of realized I was spending more time screwing around with my process and the system within Obsidian than I actually was getting work done. So I would spend countless hours like, oh, I got to tweak this dashboard a little bit, or let me go download this plugin and set that up, or, oh, I don't like the way this looks. Let me go download or make a new theme. And ultimately, attachment management and iCloud Sync was probably the two things that got me to step away from Obsidian. So the way it handles attachments, it puts them in an attachment folder. So you can have an attachment in a note like a PDF or an image or something, but it's not really in the note. It's in another folder. Since it's a markdown file, it's linking to that attachment somewhere else on your computer, which is inside the vault that you have created in Obsidian. And you can set it to be, inside. If you have a projects folder and a note inside of projects, you can have an attachments folder inside of projects, or you can have just a general attachments folder. It starts to become kind of a nightmare, especially after having used Apple Notes for about 3 months. You put things in there and you really don't even think about it as an attachment. It's just in the note. It's there. It's ready for you. And I do that a lot as I'm making videos or as I stumble upon things online. As I'm looking through YouTube, I see a thumbnail or a title that catches my eye as inspiration. I have a titles and thumbnail note that I kind of put this stuff into that I look through in case I need ideas as I'm coming up with a new video. And then iCloud Sync, so it's free in Obsidian to sync with iCloud. So my vault lives in iCloud, which means I can access it on whatever device that's in the Apple ecosystem that I choose. I think you can use a Windows computer too, as long as you download the iCloud app. But it can be a little bit slow, and it's mostly because of iCloud. Oftentimes iCloud either offloads data from your device in order to save space or save data if you haven't used things in a while. So occasionally I would open up Obsidian and it would have to like recache all of those files. And when you have like 600 notes, that can take a while. So it's not really the fastest or the most nimble program to like quickly open up and jot down an idea. I never really used daily notes to its full potential in Obsidian. Like it has a pretty good journal, but daily notes that you can take notes all day. With some of the other positives with Obsidian, though, is that since it's a markdown editor, it's saving an individual markdown file for each note wherever you choose. That could be on your computer's hard drive. That could be in iCloud. I found that now really helpful for providing context to AI, specifically Claude likes having markdown files if you're creating a project. So it's easy to copy and paste things from Apple Notes into Obsidian, make up a quick markdown file, and then paste that into the AI to have better instructions, get better results. And I also liked that you can sync Readwise highlights directly with Obsidian. Now, again, here's another thing that wasn't out with Apple Notes at the time. I really like reading things on Kindle, highlighting, syncing to Readwise. You can check out my App of the Month video where I go over Readwise's Reader app for the month of April. But ultimately, I decided I needed something more nimble and lighter weight, so I headed back to Apple Notes. And for the past 2 years, I've been running this YouTube channel, newsletter, podcast out of Apple Notes. I've had a few other passion projects, but online courses, basically anything that I'm doing is being saved in Apple Notes. And I'm using the Forever Notes framework still to help make Apple Notes a little bit more powerful now that it does have note linking built in. Then just a few weeks ago, I tried out Notion. A really brief stint with Notion, but I spent about a weekend or two trying to figure out if Notion could replace the Apple Notes and reminders system that I use. So I like having the note linked to a reminder. This is actually a pretty good use case, I think, for Notion. And there again were just some minor downsides and nits at the end after I got my Kanban system all set up, had a system for notes, had a system for research, tagging different projects, the YouTube channel, the newsletter, and the podcast. And Notion calendar and the way that it handles due dates right now was the thing that I didn't end up liking. So I create a reminder that has the main file in Apple Notes linked, and then I have a bunch of stuff underneath it. So if it's a video, I have the title of the video, it's a linked reminder to the Apple Note, and then I have a bunch of subtasks like write the video, shoot the video, edit the video, do the B-roll, and then schedule it and make some posts on social media about the video. Right now, I'm sure I could make Notion work for me, but when I put in a status date and a due date in the calendar, you can only see the due date. So the way I have reminders set up using it with the calendar or Fantastical in this case, I can schedule all of those sub steps, see them on the calendar, which is really how I plan everything out. I don't like planning in reminders because it's not as visual as seeing it all on a calendar in a month view, because when you're writing and editing and shooting videos for 3 different things, it can become cumbersome and you can have a bunch of different overlaps and overwork yourself easily is kind of the point. So I like to try to spread things out as best as I can to not become burnt out. So after that short stint with Notion, guess what? It was back to Apple Notes. And then I saw a video from Steven Robles, who created a shortcut that was like exactly what I wanted to do, which was when you have a video idea, you capture that in a title, you can jot down some notes about it. It will create a note for you, and then it will automatically link that note to Apple Reminders. I was like, finally, I have what I need. And then I went into the shortcut and it works with Bear Notes. Bear Notes has a great URL scheme that you can easily, pull the URL from the note, which is something that's a little more difficult with Apple Notes. You need a secondary plugin in order to do that. So guess what? I downloaded Bear Notes. Crap. Here's another thing for me to try. But Bear Notes, for me, may not be the end-all, be-all app. It's definitely not going to be my second brain, but I do like writing in Markdown, especially now that I am consistently doing the newsletter, and Substack takes Markdown formatting, so you can just copy and paste. And it's really nice to be able to copy and paste the newsletter that you've already written and formatted in Markdown directly into the editor and have it look pretty much like you wanted it to look. It was quite annoying with Apple Notes to write newsletters, and I use headers and subheaders and all the formatting that's in Apple Notes, but since it's rich text, when you copy and paste it, a lot of that is lost. Pretty much all of it is lost, in fact, in the Substack editor, so I would have to go in and redo the headings and subheadings and some of the links and some of the lists, and not the end of the world, but when you're trying to put out a newsletter every week, and oftentimes it comes down to the night before that you're finishing writing the newsletter to schedule it for the following morning. I want as little friction as possible there. So Bear actually has a lot of really good features. Since it's Markdown, it also has note linking. It has iCloud Sync, which is part of the paid Pro plan, but again, admittedly, the Pro plan's like $30 per year. It handles attachments really well, kind of like mixes Apple Notes and Markdown together. Obviously, Markdown support I just mentioned, which is a big plus for me writing the newsletter. And it also links well with Apple Reminders, kind of just like Apple Notes does. So if you highlight a title in Bear Notes and share it with Apple Reminders, you'll actually get a little bear icon in Apple Reminders that shows you that it's linked. Now you can also use the URL scheme that I mentioned earlier. That just comes up with a generic icon. If you're on iPhone or iPad, it just shows the Reminders icon. If you're on the Mac, it just shows something that looks like a Safari icon that's black and white. But it has great shortcuts support as well. So I am working on something here in the background. I've kind of made the same shortcut for Apple Notes, and I have a new shortcut that's based off of Stephen Robles' shortcut that I mentioned initially, that I think I'm going to call the ultimate reminders and notes linking shortcut or something. I'll come up with a better title than that, but it creates all of the stuff that I mentioned. So when you have a video, it takes the title, it takes some ideas about the title. It will create the note in either Bear Notes or Apple Notes. So I have two separate shortcuts. It then creates the reminder with the video title, and then all of the subtasks are automatically linked. So the filming, the editing, the B-roll, the writing, and the social media posting. And then for Apple Notes, you do still have to manually link it. So I mentioned you'll need the Pro Notes add-on to grab the deep link and paste that into the URL field. And with Bear Notes, it will automatically pull the deep link and link the note, so you really don't have to do anything. It automatically tags all of the notes if you're using a tagging system like I do. And then finally, if you need to do research for the video, which I often do research and use AI deep research to help me find sources for things, it will ask you that. Do you need research? Yes or no? And we'll create a research note for you that's tagged appropriately as well. So I've kind of ended up with a fragmented system. I think I'm trying to keep the newsletter on the Bear Notes right now because of the Markdown support, the note linking. and the ability to tie that directly to a reminder. And admittedly, the newsletter is less complex. So it's basically just one task that I'm writing the newsletter, and I have to post it on a certain date. And Apple Notes does everything else. So all of my video projects, all of my podcast ideas, and then all of my second brain stuff like my journal and personal items still remain in Apple Notes. So at the end of the day, I need a Notes app that's simple yet powerful. Apple Notes and Bear Notes actually check the box there. They're a pretty dynamic duo, I think. And despite the fact that I've fragmented my system a little bit, the segmented mindset does help me. Because I like trying new things, I like learning new stuff. Using new apps is one of the best ways to do that and help you learn about how you need to make your system to be most effective. And then when I ultimately realized that I didn't actually need yet another Notes app in Bear Notes, it'll be a very easy transition back to Apple Notes because you can export those notes in a rich text format. So we covered almost 10 years of Notes apps in this week's podcast, from OneNote to Drafts to Apple Notes to Obsidian, back to Apple Notes, to Notion to Bear Notes, and still Apple Notes. Let me know what you're using down in the comments below and what your preferred Notes app is. Thanks for tuning in to For Perspective, wherever you found me, whether it's YouTube or Apple or Spotify. If you can leave a review or like or comment, go ahead and do that. Let me know. I appreciate any and all feedback that you have for me. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And we'll see you next time. Later.